167 days since October 7th, 2023, a day that has brought about eternal change and everlasting effects in the life of the Palestinians. 300 of non-stop displacement, of non-stop death, injury, and also of hopelessness and helplessness. Around 2.34 million Palestinians in Gaza have been on movement because of the dire situation that they have been facing. Non-stop incidents every day, all days for a whole year now. The Palestinians in Gaza have lost around 43,000 Palestinians because of the ongoing hostilities that have taken such a very big number of the life of the Palestinians. The Palestinians in Gaza have seen around 100,000 people injured. Some of them are in need for a medical care outside of the Gaza Strip. However, they are not allowed to access that medical care because of the restrictions that are imposed in Gaza, and the minimum number recently allowed to leave with the help and support and coordination of the WHO, World Health Organization, with coordination and support from some local and international organizations. In Gaza are asked to leave their homes and head to the south or the west or the north or the east. 367 days, and the people of Gaza have been not able to access decent water supplies, have not been able to access decent medical care. 367 days. The Gazans saw some things that they would have never ever imagined to see. The catastrophic situation in the health facilities, the very large of number moving all at once under the heavy fire that has been taking place, the division of the Gaza Strip into zones, into blocks, into residential areas, and then the ground operations that are unprecedented in the history of the people of Palestine. Gazans who are living in Gaza were never they living in makeshift tents and seeing that theirs catch the diseases and the illnesses because of the situation they have been living. We are in one of the health facilities, Nasser Hospital. Few months ago, this medical care hospital, this medical complex that was called as sanctity of a humanity and care, was besieged. The people inside were targeted. Some of them were killed. Some others were injured, while some others were arrested by the Israeli forces that stormed the complex. This complex that serves around 700,000 Palestinians in the ordinary time, because it serves the area of southern Gaza Strip, including Rafah and Khan Younis, and that now serves around 1 million Palestinians, given the large number of Palestinians who were moving from their areas, from the Gaza North and from the Gaza Center area into Khan Younis. The situation in the hospital was extremely catastrophic. The whole spectrum of services that were provided were disrupted due to the ongoing and indiscriminate firing inside the hospital. The stories of the people from inside the hospital who were appealing to the international community to step in and help them were extremely terrible. Stories of how they were saving people, how they were rushing to save those people under the constant fire that was targeting them. Right behind me, this is the reception and emergency department, where we saw people falling dead without anyone being able to save them. One Palestinian was injured, and then whole camera was capturing the situation, and the ones who were there and daring to think to help and extend a helping hand were shot dead by the Israeli occupation forces that were besieging the Nasser Hospital. Not far away from this building, also the dialysis building, another building that was life-saving building for the life of the Palestinian. It was totally destroyed. I had the chance to visit the building. Everything was cut, everything was sabotaged, everything was burned, and the Palestinians who have some in need for the dialysis were left without no services whatsoever. Also, in another part of this hospital, Nasser Medical Complex, there were 3 mass graves that were found. They're telling the story, the untold story of people alive according to the investigation that was carried out by different agencies, local and international agencies, including the Palestinian Civil Defense, Palestinian Red Crescent Society, and the administration of Nasser Hospital, and also the World Health Organization that was voicing a concern over the situation that is unfolding in the Gaza Strip. Nasser Hospital saw those 3 graves, and in this area, particular area, to the very north of the complex, in the northeast of the complex, people were very busy digging on the ground, exhuming bodies, and busy to identify those bodies. I had the chance to see mothers trying to find their deer, to see daughters and sisters trying to find the bodies of their fathers or of their brothers. I saw the screams and the cries of the people. I saw the emotions of vulnerability and eternal bereavement because the loss of their still be alive. In this particular area, many stories were untold, but many more stories were told, and many suffering was captured by cameras. Gaza Strip have been seeing. People in Gaza were moving constantly from one area to another. They were moving from the north to Gaza City, and then from the north and Gaza City to Gaza Central area, and then from Gaza Central area, the very east of Central area, to the very south of the Gaza Central area, and then from Rafah to Khan Younis, and then from Khan Younis to Rafah, and the misery has been continuous. People in Gaza had to cope with a situation that is impossible to cope with. They were using whatever they can for the sake of erecting tents and for the sake of staying alive. People were living in tents, and tents were targeted. One very big incident took place in Al Mawasi area. Al Mawasi area is one of the humanitarian zones that were described by the Israeli forces as safe area. And in that very safe area, around 100 people were killed all at once. Were killed when the camp and the street and the surrounding area were targeted all together in concurrent bombardments, taking the life of 100 Palestinians at the spot and leaving many others suffering and in need of medical care. People who are living in the humanitarian zones were living in areas that are underserved, were living in areas that were targeted and destroyed. And as we talk, people who are injured are coming now to the hospitals. The continuation of the suffering of the people is the thing that has been haunting the life of the Palestinians. The ambulances, the private cars, the injuries of the people, the unknown condition. They might be people who were killed, they might be people who were injured, but the bottom line in Gaza is that safety has been compromised, personal security has been compromised, and the right of the people to access decent shelter has also been compromised. The Palestinians who are living under this constant threat of evacuation have also been living under another imminent threat of death because of the bombardment that has been destroying their life, taking the life of their dears, and even taking the lives of the ones who were fearful of that and saw it coming. The people in Gaza have been deprived from a decent shelter. They have been deprived also from access to decent water supplies. Water supplies are mostly polluted. Organization sources. Number one, because of all the water facilities were targeted by the Israeli occupation, and most of the work, the purification of the water, the treatment of the sewage water was also disrupted, and that's why the sewage water was leaking into the groundwater and polluting that groundwater. According to the UNRWA, around 1 million children in Gaza are prone to diseases because of the fact that they have been consuming bad water. Some of the diseases were already identified, some abdominal pain, some digestive problems, some diarrhea, and some hepatitis A, and then the polio virus that at least one case was identified and diagnosed, and the international community rushed for the sake of just doing something to prevent the outbreak of that lethal disease for the safety of the children. People were living a general crisis of access. They were not able to access food. They were not able to access water supplies. They were not able to access decent health care. They were not able to access decent shelter, and they were left under continuous series of bombardment and threats that have been turning their life into a real hell. And that was the description by some of the UNRWA key figures. Antonio Guterres, who said the life in Gaza, and UNRWA stated that the life of the people in Gaza is turning into a real hell. The real hell that the Gazans have been living is non-stop. Because even with the international community trying to do something, with South Africa approaching the ICJ, International Court of Justice, and appealing for the disruption and the ending of all hostilities that are taking place, and of the disease that has been imposed by Israel and the people of Gaza, that call was not respected as well. And Israel, despite the imminent possibility of some arrest warrants issued by the ICJ for some of the leaders of the Israeli government, they are not listening to that, and they are not mitigating the restrictions that have been imposed on the access of food care or on the access of life-saving medical equipment and supplies for the people of Gaza, which made the Gazans live by the minimum and even below the minimum, in a situation that characterizes continuous and exacerbated suffering because of the ongoing Israeli policies that deprive the Palestinians from everything. The Palestinians are in need of everything, and the Palestinians are denied access almost to everything. Even when it comes to the calculation of the nutritional need of the people of Gaza, whatever they are receiving is selective and is decided by the Israeli forces. And whatever they are receiving is below the minimum, where they are left to face the very lacking situations they are in the middle of, with nothing they have in hand and with very limited resources that will never be also efficient and sufficient to help them through those difficult times. People of Gaza have been hoping that a ceasefire would be realized. They have been following the news about that ceasefire. They have been hoping that an agreement would be reached between Israel and Hamas that would bring an end to the hostilities and exchange prisoners. Once again, disappointment continued. Every time they have been seeing different things. Sometimes the targeting was taking place in the heavily dense, overpopulated Palestinian refugee camps, such as in Khan Younis refugee camp, such as in An-Nusayrat refugee camp, or in Jabalia refugee camp. Jabalia refugee camp saw a ground operation that lasted for 21 days. The Khan Younis refugee camp saw a ground operation that lasted for around 2 months. And what was left behind is debris and wrecks of the homes. Wrecks of the homes and the hopes and the memories of the people. The people who left their homes under the heavy fire and were hopeful that they would come back to their homes and find something that can accommodate their needs. All they found, the dead bodies that were falling and never recovered because of the ongoing hostilities that prevented anyone from just recovering them. The situation 1 year after is still the same. Bodies are still thrown on the streets of Rafah, and no one can ever retrieve them. And some of the areas that the Israeli occupation withdrew from, some people found dead bodies of people and were able to recover their clothes only because of the fact that the bodies decomposed and the only thing that remained is the clothes of the people. The dead bodies on the streets, some of the strangers were taking the bodies and burying them. People of Gaza were hoping that this would come to an end. Unfortunately, it has not come to an end, and even the targeting is intensified. People of Gaza were hoping that October 7th anniversary would bring them some comfort and ease. However, 2 days now, the bombardment is still continuous. The killing is still continuous, the suffering is still continuous, and the displacement is still continuous. People in the very north of the Gaza Strip leave their homes and head to Gaza City or to Gaza southern area, which is Khan Younis, Rafah, and Gaza central area. People in the north told that the north was into while they are extremely aware that there is no safe place in Gaza, there is no one safe in Gaza. Their suffering continues. People in the Gaza central area, from the very east of Al Bureij area in Gaza southern area to the very west of the Al-Nusayrat area, a very large streak from the very east to the very west, dividing the Gaza central area and serving as a buffer zone, was created by Israel 2 days ago. Head to the very south or to Deir al-Balah area in the very south of the Gaza central area. The suffering is replicated. The suffering is non-stop. The hopes are chartered by the ongoing suffering of the people. And people again are suffering, and they're again hoping an end would be brought to that suffering. However, today morning, October 7th, 2024, the Israeli war jets were flying all over Gaza, making some terrifying sounds and reminding the Palestinians that occupation is still there, that occupation is still controlling their life, and that occupation is still bringing them death, destruction, displacement, and despair. As you can, people are to live a decent life. And it's not occur. People are suffering, people are injured, people are deprived, but people are hopeful that some peace would be brought into their life and that this ongoing madness, as called by the Palestinians, would stop. Now people are taking one injured person. We don't know the condition of the case, but what we know is that he or she were brought on a rickshaw because of the fact that the situation was extremely urgent, and this urgency continues, and this death continues, and the occupation continues, and despair continues as well. Is it okay now? Okay?
366 days, 6 hours, 54 minutes, and counting. That's the time that has passed since the worst day the state of Israel has ever experienced, possibly the worst day the Jewish people ever experienced since the Holocaust. Yes, October 7th, 2023, the worst day that this country has ever had and probably will have. That's how it feels here. Why is that? Because the very fundamental principles on which this country was established were completely shattered. Everything that Israelis believed in was completely gone. The state of Israel was established on the belief, the faith, that if any Israeli citizen is in trouble, if any Jewish person in the world is in trouble, then the state of Israel will be there to save him. On October 7th, 2023, that belief was completely gone. People had to defend themselves by themselves against an army of terrorists coming from Gaza, who eventually killed many of them, raped many of them, kidnapped many of them. A year on, October 7th, 2024, and the shock is clearly felt all across the country. It is felt everywhere you go, probably more than any other place. Here in this place called Hostage Square in central Tel Aviv. It's a place that reminds us that even after everything that has happened, that even after a year of war, a successful war in Gaza, a successful war in Lebanon, successful operations as far as Iran, there's still one very key issue, and until that issue is not solved, Israel cannot start healing itself. That issue is, of course, the 101 hostages who are still held in Gaza. 97 of them were kidnapped on that horrible day, October 7, 2023. Another 4 were held in Gaza beforehand. Here in Hostage Square, everywhere you go, everything reminds you of the fact that 101 Israelis are still there, are still in Gaza, and they still have to be saved. It's an issue that is tearing apart the Israeli society. Many people are wondering what's the right thing to do. Should Israel first take care of Hamas? Should Israel first take care of Hezbollah? Should Israel first take care of the Iranian threat? Should Israel first take care of many other things? But for many people, the main issue is the hostages. Before anything is happening, before Hamas is crushed, before Hezbollah in Lebanon is crushed, before the Iranians are dealt with, for many Israelis who come here week after week, day after day, the most important issue is to bring back those 101 hostages. If we can look here at this square, we see many yellow flags representing the freedom for the hostages, the wish to see them all coming back. And it's an issue that is an integral one for the Israeli society. We can say it again and again, but it has to be understood. Israel cannot be healed unless the hostages come back. Where are they held? Where's Hamas holding them in Gaza? Maybe this could give us an example. Right here behind me, you can see this. This is a tunnel similar to the one that hundreds of those exist in Gaza, where the hostages possibly are held. We have the privilege of being outside in the sun, but inside it's suffocating. There's no oxygen. there's no food, there's no water, there's no nothing. And for people there that are held for more than a year and sometimes moved from one tunnel to another, it's simply hell. That is a simple hell. Of course, a very big question now, as mentioned before, is what comes first? Should Israel first deal with crushing Hamas, crushing Hezbollah, or dealing with the hostages? And this day can give us a very clear example as to how much Israel has been successful in dealing with Hamas. For example, if we look back at October 7, 2023, last year, Hamas fired on that day 4,300 rockets towards Israeli territory. A year on, October 7, 2024, a day in which Hamas clearly would have wanted to fire many, many rockets towards Israeli territory. At this moment, we're speaking, at an afternoon hour, we're speaking of 10 rockets that Hamas fired so far on this day. About 0.3% compared with the amount of rockets fired by Hamas on this day a year ago. Israel clearly was able to crush Hamas. Hamas is not even close to having the capabilities that it had a year ago. Hezbollah is crushed day after day. The mythical leader of the organization, Hassan Nasrallah, is no longer around. Many other prominent figures in Hezbollah are dead. Many prominent figures in Hamas are dead. So many Israelis are saying, well, we Israel, we did what we had to do, crush our enemies. As successful as Israel may be, it will never be enough if the hostages are not around. It's felt everywhere in the country. On this day, October 7th, a year after the war began, we saw many protests around the country. In Jerusalem, at the Prime Minister's office, for example. Later in the day, protests will also be held here. This place is just outside the headquarters of the Israeli Defense Ministry. More protests are expected throughout the country. But the main issue for those protesters is bring them back. This is the main call that has been echoing time and time again. Bring them back. At the moment, it is not happening. 252 people altogether were kidnapped on October 7th, 2023. Roughly half of them, a bit under half of them, are still held in Gaza. Many returned alive in that exchange deal back in November. Many others, unfortunately, returned only as dead bodies. 101 hostages are still in Gaza. According to the unofficial expectation, the unofficial account, roughly half of them are alive. Meaning, if this is true, 50 Israelis can be saved. They can be saved if some kind of a deal is reached. This is something that the protesters here are asking to have time and time again. There are weekly protests here in Tel Aviv, not far from the place where we are, calling to bring the hostages back. But at the moment, it is not happening. Not only that, we do not see a lot of any advance towards a hostage deal. We've not seen any such advance in the past few weeks. And the people coming here and the protesters throughout the country are calling time and time again to bring the hostages back. Once again, I say, some 50 Israelis or so can be saved. They can come home alive if some kind of a deal is reached. Will that happen? Will the government take care of that first, or take care of the other burning issues? The other issues are burning. Hezbollah is a very troubling issue for Israel. Iran, as we saw last week, a very troubling issue, firing more than 180 ballistic missiles towards Israel. All those are crucial issues. But for the people here in Hostage Square, nothing is more important than bringing the Israeli men, women, children, a baby that was kidnapped when he was just 9 months old. Bring them all back home. Baby Kfir Bibas, as we mentioned, was kidnapped when he was just 9 months old. There's no indication that he's not alive, meaning as far as Israel is concerned, he's still alive and perhaps can be saved. Bring them back, say all the protesters here. Will the government do that? Will the government listen? Or will it care about the other burning issues first? A very big question. A year after the war began, it seems that there is no clear answer. For CGTN, this is Jonathan Regev, Hostage Square, Tel Aviv.
موقع خريطة حاطة الموقع في الموقع افتح الستارة في الموقع شغل الموقع غير برنامج برنامج لا الأحمر نزلته هنا مرة في السنة برنامج سيبك انت شغل زي كده.
It's been 1 year since the conflict between Israel and Hamas broke out. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas militants struck a music festival in southern Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking about 250 people hostage. Israel responded with a devastating military offensive on the Gaza Strip. Israeli bombardments have since triggered a humanitarian crisis in Gaza and displaced much of the enclave's 2.3 million people, leading to genocide allegations at the World Court, which Israel firmly denies. The Gaza Health Ministry says almost 42,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks since October 7th. In Israel, the official death toll stands at about 1,200. In 1 year, more than 500 healthcare workers and more than 130 Palestinian journalists have also been killed. CGTN's Gaza correspondent Noor Harazin reflects on the events of October 7th in 2023 and the following few days.
So the 7th of October, I remember that I set my alarm at around 7:30 in the morning because I wanted to wake up the kids for their kindergarten. And at exactly 6:30, we started hearing these continuous bombings and explosions here and there, and we all woke up, like me and the kids and my husband, and we could even hear the people in the building and the buildings surrounding us go out to their windows and their balconies and looking. And when going out to our balcony and we saw the rockets, actually at the beginning I thought that these rockets are heading to the west, meaning that they are being fired toward the sea, because normally the resistance fighter and the resistance factions in Gaza sometimes do these experiments and they fire rockets toward the shores and towards the sea. But when actually looking closely, we started realizing that rockets are being fired towards Israel. And the rockets were coming from everywhere, from the north, from the south, from the east, everywhere. So at that moment, we realized that something is happening, but we could not actually tell what is happening and who is launching these rockets. Is it Hamas? Is it the Islamic Jihad? It is another resistance faction in Gaza. Why are they doing this? Something happened, and actually it took us an hour, a whole hour, until footage started coming from the Israeli settlements around Gaza, and we understood what was really happening, and we understood that Hamas carried out this surprise attack on Israel. And at that point, I knew that it is a new war on Gaza, and I knew that it will not be like anything before. However, at the same time, I never thought that it will last for a year and even more, as I am speaking now, and this thing is still continuous.
It's been 1 year since the conflict between Israel and Hamas broke out. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas militants struck a music festival in southern Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking about 250 people hostage. Israel responded with a devastating military offensive on the Gaza Strip. Israeli bombardments have since triggered a humanitarian crisis in Gaza and displaced much of the enclave's 2.3 million people, leading to genocide allegations at the World Court, which Israel firmly denies. The Gaza Health Ministry says almost 42,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks since October 7th. In Israel, the official death toll stands at about 1,200. In 1 year, more than 500 healthcare workers and more than 130 Palestinian journalists have also been killed. CGTN's Gaza correspondent Noor Harazin reflects on the events of October 7th in 2023 and the following few days.
So the 7th of October, I remember that I set my alarm at around 7:30 in the morning because I wanted to wake up the kids for their kindergarten. And at exactly 6:30, we started hearing these continuous bombings and explosions here and there, and we all woke up, like me and the kids and my husband, and we could even hear the people in the building and in the buildings surrounding us go out to their windows and their balconies and looking. And when going out to our balcony and we saw the rockets, actually at the beginning I thought that these rockets are heading to the west, meaning that they are being fired toward the sea, because normally the resistance fighter and the resistance factions in Gaza sometimes do these experiments, and they fire rockets toward the shores and towards the sea. But when actually looking closely, we started realizing that rockets are being fired towards Israel. And the rockets were coming from everywhere, from the north, from the south, from the east, everywhere. So at that moment, we realized that something is happening, but we could not actually tell what is happening and who is launching these rockets. Is it Hamas? Is it the Islamic Jihad? It is another resistance faction in Gaza. Why are they doing this? Something happened, and actually it took us an hour, a whole hour, until footage started coming from the Israeli settlements around Gaza, and we understood what was really happening, and we understood that Hamas carried out this surprise attack on Israel. And at that point, I knew that it is a new war on Gaza, and I knew that it will not be like anything before. However, at the same time, I never thought that it will last for a year and even more, as I am speaking now, and this thing is still continuous.
A year after their lives were upended, displaced Palestinians are trying to restore a semblance of normalcy, even as Israel continues its attacks. And one of them is boxing coach Osama Ayoub. The boxing club that he and his students worked hard to build in the Gaza Strip has been destroyed, but they continue to train in the hope that they can participate in competitions in the future, such as the 2028 Olympics.
5 6 7. أنا الكابتن أسامة أيوب من قطاع غزة، ساكن في الشيخ رضوان. نزحت من غزة إلى رفح. كنت أنا مدير لمخيم لأهل الخير، كلفوني من ناس من رام الله إنه نعمل مخيم. الحمد لله عملته في رفح تقريبا حوالي 60 خيمة. من خلال هذا عملت مبادرة أعمل للملاكمة، والحمد لله يعني اتصل علي طبعا الجيش الإسرائيلي كويس، قال لي المنطقة هذه خط أحمر، خذ الخيم والبنات اللي عندك بتدربهم إلى مواصي خان يونس، ممكن أنت تفتح هناك أمن حاجة لك. أجيت طبعا أنت هنا مكان خان يونس هنا، عملت مبادرة هنا، لقيت برضه الأهالي مبسوطين، هيك أنت بتقوي شخصيتهم، بتقوي عزيزتهم، حابين اللعبة. البلد كلها هي ايش في غزه كله فيه قصف، يعني فيش مكان امن احنا بندرب فيه، بس احنا نستمر. انا يعني اقل حاجه احنا انه في عندنا البنات عندهم شجاعه، عندهم كمدرب انا انه عنده طموح، انه ما وقفش الموضوع، ما وقفش تدريبات للبنات في البوكسينج. قبل حرب 7 اكتوبر على سبيل انه كمان اطلع على فنلندا، كان في بنت يعني مؤهله تطلع على فنلندا، بس للاسف احنا نزحنا هناك. اجى الخبر وانا في رفح انه في رفح كنازح، اتصلوا علي قالوا لي النادي عندك كله تدمر. طبعا النادي اللي في غزه كان فيه امكانيات كلها موجوده، الجيش الاسرائيلي دمر كليته وحرق كل حاجه فيه كويس. كان هي صدمه الي، بس انا عارف الاحتلال يعني ما مخلي شيء، ولا مخلي حجر ولا مخلي دار ولا مخلي اي حاجه. يعني بنحكي على موضوع الادوات، فيش اليوم ولا كلبز ولا لفافات ولا واقع اسنان ولا شو اسمه اسدير للبنات ولا واقع راس ولا مشدات، فيش ولا شيء. معدوم كل حاجه. انا كمدرب يعني استخدمت عقلي واستخدمت الامكانيات الموجوده، المخده اللي بتنام عليها البنت، الصينيه اللي بتاعت الطبيخ اللي بحطه عليها، عشان انا استمر. حلمي انا ان امثل محافل عربيه او دوليه، اطلع بنت تمثل في الدول العربيه، كمان تمثل في الاولمبياد 28 ان شاء الله. هذا حلمي، وان شاء الله يا رب الله يوفقنا يا رب. بتمنى كمان التوفيق كمان للبنات، وبتمنى كمان الداعمين من اللجنه الاولمبيه كمان يكونوا كمان داعمه لموضوع البوكسين هذا، وان شاء الله يا رب تنتهي الحرب يا رب.
UNICEF has sent a 25-ton shipment of medicine and medical supplies to Lebanon. The aid arrived at Rafik Hariri International Airport in Beirut on Saturday. Lebanon's Minister of Health, Firaz Abiad, thanked UNICEF for the aid.
Today, we're receiving special aid from the health and medical sector in Lebanon. The aid came through UNICEF. The plane is carrying 25 tons of important medicines, especially for the displaced, as well as supplies that we need in hospitals. This is the third batch, and a total of 70 tons of aid has arrived, part of which arrived on yesterday's flights, and a part of which entered the country by land via Jordan. This aid is very important because we know the difficult situation that the health sector is going through, and this helps motivate the hospital workers to continue providing their valuable services, especially for displaced people, whose number exceeds 1.2 million people. I thank the international community, especially UNICEF, which is a constant partner of the Ministry of Health. This aid is vital to the continuation of our public services and health sector.
The hospitals and the PHC are in dire need of drugs to replenish all the stocks were used these last 2 weeks. And UNICEF is supporting the government and the hospital and the PHC by bringing today 25 metric tons of different kits, trauma kits and emergency kits. And it will be this week a total of 67 metric tons of such health goods. This will be able to serve up to 700,000 people for a period of 3 months, but naturally more are required for other type of disease and to maintain the PHC being a vital part of the response.
Israel has expanded its military operations with an airstrike that targeted a coffee shop in a refugee camp in the city of Tulkram. The attack on Thursday marked the first time in 2 decades that Israel has used a fighter jet in the West Bank. Noor Harazin has this report.
The Palestinian Ministry of Health reported that 18 Palestinians, including children, were killed in an airstrike carried out by Israeli warplanes on the Tulkarem camp, in an attack considered as the bloodiest in the West Bank in years. The Israeli military said it was targeting Zahi Awafi, head of the Hamas movement in Tulkarem in the West Bank.
For the first time, F-16 warplanes are bombing civilians here, and here we are, as you see, an area crowded with people. This is a genocide. The occupation does not differentiate between civilian and armed people. We are no different from Gaza and Lebanon, and here we are now sharing their suffering and woes.
Although the clashes between Israel and Hamas have not subsided since the beginning of the conflict, the past few days have witnessed an escalation in clashes in many cities in the West Bank, including Tulkarem, Jenin, Nablus, Hebron, and Jerusalem.
What we see in Lebanon and in Gaza is happening now to us in Tulkarem. The occupation cannot confront us face to face, so it uses airplanes to bomb civilians.
On Friday, the Israeli police attacked worshippers at Bab al-Asbat, preventing some from reaching the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. The police beat the worshippers and fired tear gas, which led to several injuries and the dispersal of the people in the mosque.
This occupation seeks to implement the fascist government's program called the Decisive Program, which is a program of annexation, deportation, killing, and imprisonment. Therefore, this occupation carries out its crimes in a systematic manner, destroying the infrastructure, destroying the Palestinian national economy, impoverishing people and destroying homes.
Israel says their military operation goal is to eliminate the Hamas militant group. Israeli forces have arrested more than 10,000 Palestinians from various cities in the West Bank since last year on October the 7th. Noor Harazin, CGTN.
Hello everyone, this is Adel El Mahrouky speaking. I'm reporting from the southern Lebanese city of Tyr, part of Sur, and it's very close to the southwest Lebanese-Israeli border. What you're seeing in the landscape is smoke following a strike by Israeli air forces. For the past about half an hour, there has been a continuation of intensified airstrikes that has been bombarding the landscape of this city, one strike after the other. This place is a Hezbollah stronghold from which the Lebanese armed resistance group would launch its missiles beyond these mountains into Israel's Jalili area. This is one of the hot zones of the battle between the Israeli Defense Forces and the Lebanese armed resistance group Hezbollah. This had been taking place in months. The Mediterranean city that you're seeing, Tyr, used to be a resort city where people would come here for their summer vacation to enjoy nice sandy beaches and Mediterranean shores with good weather. But of course, since October 7th last year, after the war on Gaza broke out, following that, the Lebanese armed resistance have joined the battle against Israel, and more of the armed resistance groups in the region have been also part of that battle. The Houthis in Yemen have launched strikes against Israel, groups in Iraq, and of course the biggest escalation during the past months was the Iranian attack on Israel, following several attacks from Israel inside Iranian territories, including the Iranian embassy in Damascus. This area has been part of and instructed dozens of villages that the Israeli military forces demanded to be evacuated. Most of the residents have left the area. There are still people. Not everyone has left, but it means that the attacks on this city are not planned. Unlike the Lebanese capital, where usually a warning would come to a specific building or district, because this is part of the wide battle zone and orders of evacuation have been given. No attacks, no prior warnings are issued. Where I'm talking to you from is a hotel, a resort in the city of Tyr. And here, behind me, as you can see, journalists, reporters and correspondents from many media outlets across the world come here to follow the battle in the southern part of Lebanon, to report it to many audiences like you. And they're all watching this escalated air raid. Above me, the space is no-fly zone, so no aircrafts are allowed. Whenever there is a sound of an airplane, everyone here knows and realizes this is an Israeli aircraft about to launch a strike on this city. And the compound is considered to be safe as part of it because several UN or UNIFIL specifically, a UN body responsible to monitor the borders between Israel and Lebanon, several of the UNIFIL troops and vehicles would come here frequently. What makes it kind of the safest place in this city, and that's why all journalists would come here to follow the news, to report hoping that nothing wrong can happen. Just about a couple of weeks ago, one of the missiles being launched has malfunctioned and fell close to the hotel. It did not explode, but kind of these incidents may happen, and they could be the only threat to the coverage and the stay here. All of South Lebanon is in deep battle. Bombardments can be heard day and night. Strikes from Hezbollah into Israel and the other way around, and strikes from Israel into Lebanon in the south part continues almost 24/7 in all the southern parts, as well as several districts in the capital Beirut, including the southern suburb of Beirut, which is also a Hezbollah stronghold. It is where the strike that killed Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, has been conducted. It is also where the second assassination strike that targeted Hashim Safiuddin was also made. Other than that, evacuation and aid teams, you can hear the sirens in the distance as they try to first find the location of the strikes that happens in the city, and then they try to go there hoping to find someone they can save or rescue. Our movement across the city is not safe. That's why all of the media teams are advised to remain here unless an organized convoy will be taking place so that we can explore the city. And beyond that, connectivity is not usually guaranteed. Whenever strikes take place and Hezbollah launches some of the strikes, you would hear the Iron Dome from Israel trying to intercept. And when that happens, usually communication gets jammed, specifically cellular networks, of course. Some of the strikes could be close, and others would be far away. Most of them are far away. We're talking about a distance from 10 up to 20 kilometers in that horizon. The mountains of Lebanon have not been an easy place for Israeli Defense Forces to infiltrate. And this is what Hezbollah aims at maintaining, to push any attempts for boots on the ground in any part of the south, to maintain that they have control here so that they can launch further attacks. Where we are, because of the evacuation, most of the hotel staff are not working. So hotel is working with the minimum possible staff it has. There's no kitchen, no food, unless you bring it outside. There are like 1 or 2 restaurants operating in the city through which they can provide people here with food. However, the journey to these restaurants and back is not safe, as declared by the authorities here. And therefore, people would either use mainly canned food, try to cook their food here, if possible, by themselves, despite that this is a resort with all the facilities of any hotel. So Tyre is one of the most troubled cities. It is and has been one of the main or the first cities in the forefront of this long war between Israel and Lebanon. United Nations troops here try to register all the violations that happen against the sovereignty of Lebanon, based on an earlier agreement that made their existence here approved by both countries. But recently, the United Nations has voiced its concern by the escalated attacks from Israel to Lebanon, saying that the strikes would come very close in many occasions to the stations, the unit, the surveillance towers that the UNIFIL team are located in. And therefore it is becoming increasingly alarming for the UN body, and has called both parties from Lebanon and from Israel to try to abide by the international laws that should guarantee the safety of the UN missions so that they can proceed with their work without interruptions, and try to push, first register any violation and then push for what used to be negotiation between UNIFIL and representatives from Lebanon and Israel. But of course, such talks have been on hold. And when fighting is happening, nothing much can be expected in terms of like reaching a ceasefire or even starting talks for a ceasefire. Nations try to push for a ceasefire in Lebanon. Maybe the global move when it comes to Lebanon appears to be much stronger than when the war broke out on Gaza. For instance, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, has recommended halting sending arms to Israel until a ceasefire happens in Lebanon. France also released a statement saying that 88 countries in the world, all Francophone, French-speaking nations, have called for a ceasefire in Lebanon. So such massive movements have not happened that quickly or in that magnitude to support Palestine. But when it comes to Lebanon, there are hopes that these efforts might prevent Lebanon from coming to be another Gaza. I will keep reporting to you guys until this week ends. I'm Adel El Mahrouky, and I'm staying in Tir Sur at the southern part of Lebanon, monitoring and reporting on the war that broke out between Israel and Hezbollah, the armed resistance group in Lebanon. Stay tuned for more from CGTN, and goodbye.
رژیم صهیونیستی ناتوان از رویارویی با رزمندگان مقاومت اسلامی حزب الله لبنان در روی زمین در حال بمباران مناطق مسکونی در نقاط مختلف به ویژه شهر سور است. همکنون این تصویر یکی از مناطق شهر سور رو نشون میده و به نظر میرسه که رژیم صهیونیستی در زمین به بنبست خورده و تلاش میکنه اقدامات تلافی‌جویانه خودش رو از طریق هواپیماهای جنگی روی مناطق مسکونی و پرجمعیتی صورت بده. میثم دلاوری، خبرنگار اعزامی خبرگزاری صدا و سیما، جنوب غربی لبنان، سور.
يلا اغايه خلاص خلاص يلا
طيب بس خلاص هي بس انت هلا عشان تاخذ راحتك عشان تقعد تروح تيجي الانجل هذا خليك اذا تنقز اعطيهم اشاره يا عايز اعطيهم شو ايه اعطيهم شو له 40 احلى وحده هلا بحط هلا كاميرا ثالثه بقول له ما ظبطت بسرعه لا بشيل هيك لا انت عم تبلينا يا اخي قال له بدك تشيل هاي نشيل هاي 23 10 كيف بدينا الصوم مش عم تلاقي العادي بس تحكوها تشيل هاي ولا شو نعمل لا ما في بدك تشيل هذيك من هلا يعني من هلا عم عندي فكره تعال هذه هون بتصل عليه اطلع لايف اي هون شو ما بدي احط هون انا بس بدي احط هون هيك ايش بدك ويرفض مش هي بس عشان الفلاش بس
CGTN, Sydney.
Crowds are gathering for pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli demonstrations and memorial events across Europe. Security officials in several countries are at a higher stage of alert over possible terror attacks for violent protests. Natalie Carney reports from Berlin.
Thousands of people have been gathering all across Europe as the conflict in Gaza reaches its one-year mark. Here in the German capital, Berlin, in the district of Neukölln, hundreds of people have been gathering in support of Palestine and against what they call a genocide in the Gaza Strip.
We demand an immediate stop of all arms and weapons being delivered to Israel and the continuous impunity Israel receives from Germany and other nations in this world.
We do not allow them to deny the rights of Palestinians to stand on the streets and express their rage against this injustice.
Following the events in Israel on October the 7th of last year, a near total ban was placed on pro-Palestinian rallies. This one has been allowed to go ahead with substantial police presence, but its location has been limited. Meanwhile, at Berlin's iconic Brandenburg Gate, hundreds are gathering in support of Israel and to condemn Hamas's crimes against both Israelis and Palestinians.
We have two problems in this society, right-wing extremism and Islamism, and we have to fight both together. That's why I'm here.
Tomorrow evening, the German president, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, will take part in vigils against anti-Semitism at the Jewish Cultural Center. Protests are also taking place across Europe. In the Spanish capital, Madrid, hundreds have staged a flash mob in a call to end military operations in the Gaza Strip and the Israeli-occupied West Bank. And in Paris, French Jews have gathered to commemorate the one-year anniversary of the Hamas attacks in Israel. Memorial services have also been taking place across the United Kingdom for all the lives lost on all sides as the conflict in the Middle East escalates. Natalie Carney for CGTN in Berlin.
The 2024 Nobel Prize.